Tēnā koutou katoa, kia ora and welcome to another Manawanui live stream. My name is Simon and today I am here to serve you all, the viewers of the Manawanui stream. I don't have many updates to share with you, which means we've got the full half hour if we require it to answer any of your questions and to discuss any of the topics you'd like me to cover. So if you're watching this right now and you have a question you've always wanted me to answer, or if you've got something burning that you'd really love me to talk about, if you'd want some advice or insight into individualized funding or Manawanui in any way, then today is a perfect opportunity to ask me those questions because we've got all the time we could ever have. So yeah, say hi. If you've never asked a question before, now's a great time. All you need to do is simply type it out in the comments, either on your phone or computer, the device you are watching on, and I will respond to it as it comes through. I will just remind everybody, if you aren't aware, that we have our team day coming up. So it will be Thursday, the 4th of December. If you are unfamiliar with what our team day is, it is, we do it every 6 months and we invite all of the Manawanui staff who work remote. So that is our coaches and some of my team that don't often come up to Auckland. They all come up to the office for the day and we close the phones so that our CEC team can participate as well. And it's a day of strategy and planning. There's a lot of training that goes on, and then also just some general team building activities. But really the purpose of the day is to remind everybody at Manawanui just why we turn up for work every day. And that is to support the thousands of people who rely on us to be their individualized funding host. And we use the time to think of ways of how to improve that service that we provide to you all and to, come together as an organization. So I guess if you're watching this and you've got some feedback that you'd like to be discussed at our team days, maybe some suggestions for improvements. Is there something that the portal doesn't do that you'd really like for it to be able to do for you? Is there an issue with the way, or is there an improvement, that the way our coaching team or CEC team could improve in the way they support you? Or what about the payments process? Is there an issue, or is there room for improvement with our payments team and the way you process your expense claims or the way you process your timesheets? So now is a great time to put any of those thoughts down either in a comment or in an email to us, just so we can bring it up during our team day event and have the whole organization discuss it together. So yeah, just a reminder, the information that is really important to you all is that Thursday, 4th of December, our phones will be offline. So that means you won't be able to get through on the phone and we won't be responding to emails until the following day on Friday, and also the phones will be back open from the Friday afterwards on the 5th. It's also important to remember that there is lots of public holidays coming up, especially around paying your staff appropriately. So making sure that you know how to pay your staff if they're working on a public holiday. Thankfully, both Christmas Day and Boxing Day, and then the 2 holidays after New Year's Eve, they both are on the Thursday and Friday. So they don't impact our standard processing timelines at all. So you know that if you submit your timesheets on time, so Monday evening after your fortnight ends, you know that you will get paid on a Tuesday or Wednesday without any issues, because the public holidays are nicely be placed on the Thursday and Friday of those weeks. So if you've just joined me, I said at the top of the half hour that today is about questions. So if you've got any questions, I would love to answer them for you. Is there a topic you'd like for me to discuss? I don't have many updates to share with you all. I just want to give you the opportunity to ask a question and get a response immediately. You know, it doesn't, there's any topic I'm happy to answer. There's nothing off limits. Obviously, if I don't know the answer, then I'll let you know. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any question. Terry comments saying, what's the bet? Lots of us try ringing you on that day. Well, so if you do ring on the day where the phones are closed, you'll get a voicemail. It's actually my lovely voice that you hear on the voicemail. And it will just remind you that we're off that day and to email through your query that we can respond to the following day. So yeah, if you ring through, you'll hear my voice just reminding you that we're actually at team days and apologizing that we won't be able to answer the phone and encouraging you to email through. Diane says, did you see my question on the other post? No, I didn't. So if you just give me a moment, I can see that some comments have been posted. I'm just bringing up the post here. Okay. Diane says, does the removal of purchasing guidelines in 2026 return us back to where we were with more flexible guidelines, or does it give everyone carte blanche to do what they want? The latter would seem a bit too irresponsible in the other direction as a taxpayer, which is very fair enough. So what I can say is that there is definitely not going to be a scenario where you can use your funding to purchase absolutely anything that you want. There is going to be no purchasing guidelines that we're familiar with, so there won't be the 4 criteria that you need to justify against. What we do have so far, so I won't get ahead of myself, it's important to remind you all that there is a lot of detail from DSS that has not been provided. And so between now and the 1st of April, we will be communicating as much as we can around what's missing from the equation. So the first part, let's talk about what they have said already. They have said in their update that any purchase that is sensitive or expensive is still going to require approval from a host. I use quote marks because we don't have definitions for what that means in relation to your individualized funding. The only example they used was an overseas holiday. So we know for a fact that if you're looking to use your funding to go overseas, that is going to need approval from your host organization. When it comes to sensitive or expensive, we don't know whether that's going to be a firm dollar figure. You know, is it going to be $500 is expensive and anything above that needs approval? Is it going to be a percentage of your allocation as the expensive marker? We don't know. The other piece of information, and I'm just going to make sure that I have the right information. So I'm going to the DSS website. So just please bear with me because I just want to make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn. Okay, yes. So the other piece of information that's really key around the flexibility is that they've said in their announcement so far, you will be able to choose how you spend your flexible funding to address barriers linked to your disability. So I'm assuming there's still going to be some conversation or justification from IF users around how a purchase, addresses the barrier in their life from their disability. So yeah, we don't have any more detail in that. Obviously, you know that you won't be able to purchase things like alcohol, tobacco, or anything related to gambling. Okay, sorry, there's actually been an update to this information. So instead of using the word expensive, they've said a very limited number of purchases will require pre-approval. This includes international travel and one-off purchases above a set value limit. So that's interesting. So they've provided more detail around purchase approval. So it seems like there's going to be a set value limit. So anything above that's going to need pre-approval. And what we don't know is that limit going to be different for different people, or is it going to be related to somebody's funding? But that's, yeah, so that's on the DSS website I'm reading from right now. Diane says, excuse me, just getting to the right spot. Do you think it, oh, so this is Terry. Sorry, Terry says, do you think it would help me with an outside walker, currently have an indoor one? It's, at this stage, probably. We know that prior to the changes last year, people could purchase equipment that their equipment provider wouldn't fund them. So, you know, for example, a all-terrain wheelchair. So I would say that you will have the flexibility next year to decide to use your individualized funding to purchase additional walking aids. So an outside walker, I would say you probably could, but at this stage, I'm guessing I'm making an assumption based on information out there and conversations I've seen. Karen says, something that comes up often is when people are loading expenses into timesheets, they submit without realizing that it is going to close the timesheet off. Maybe when people are onboarded as a new client, maybe staff could make sure they know that this happens. That is incredibly helpful feedback, Karen. Thank you very much. I know it's actually a lot more easier to do on the app. So if you're using the mobile app, it's a lot easier to accidentally submit a timesheet and lock it for processing. It is a lot easier when you're, on a computer to keep a timesheet or expense claim in draft without submitting it. But that's actually really good feedback, and I'm going to pass it on to the coaching team immediately after this. Thank you, Karen. As always, a wealth of information and helpful advice. So yeah, people like Karen are a godsend for IF. Just making sure I've kind of answered off Diane's original question. So yeah, basically, we're not going to have 4 purchasing guidelines that people need to meet for every purchase, but we're also not going to have a situation where people can purchase anything they want under the guise that it's a disability support. There is a happy medium that we're going to find in there somewhere. The interesting thing, right, is that from February 1st, we're going to be onboarding new people to Manawanui who have gone through the new process with their NASC. They will have a funding plan, they will have goals and a purpose for their funding, and they will be able to use their funding to achieve those goals. And that's how their funding will be spent. And then that will only be after the 1st of April, everybody else will then operate under this new model where there are no purchasing guidelines, but there will be a new framework to make purchases. So it's going to be quite tricky there for us in that sort of adjustment period. And I guess I would just, make it very clear now that next year we're going to go through another period of rapid education and change, because we're going to have to adjust to new ways of supporting you just as fast, if not faster, than you will have to adjust to new ways of spending your funding. And so it is going to be a bit of a curve. There's going to be situations where things don't go smoothly. I can almost guarantee it. But yeah, I think next year it is going to be a much more positive community of individualized funding users. Of course, with that though is the unknown around funding recalculations. So if you aren't aware, DSS will recalculate everybody who has a current individualized funding allocation. We believe it will just be a overnight thing around April sometime, where your funding will be updated based on spending data that they have. So that will impact people differently. And we've already started having conversations with the NASC, flagging a few concerns around that process for some people. But, we're just going to have to go along with the plan of changes that DSS has set out. Diane says, portal feedback, things like swimming lessons, having to put the same blurb and justification every single term all year. Perhaps have an option to tick that it's already been approved many times. Yeah, like that should be a lot easier, I agree. And I think the changes that DSS are putting to IF will force us to update our portal to make that sort of process much easier. But I would also challenge that if you're getting swimming lessons for a full year and it's the 3rd or 4th term and you're paying for that in an expense claim, I would imagine that my team aren't asking for a justification for that 3rd or 4th term, as long as they know in the description what the invoice is. So something simple as the name of the person's funding, who the swimming lesson is for, and then swimming lessons for term. And there shouldn't be a need to actually justify how those swimming lessons meet the criteria for being a disability support or being a respite activity. So yeah, I would encourage you to not need to Diane says, no, they're not. I just put it as contract care, but I always question myself. Yeah, I mean, I suppose contract care is probably the right expense type to use because it's not a purchase, right? Because it's a service. So yeah, as long as you put contract care and yeah, the small description. All right, cool, Diane. That's good to know that the team aren't questioning you repeatedly for that. But yes, your suggestion around a better process for claiming repeat expenses that doesn't make it seem like you need to continually justify yourself for those expenses is something that we should look to implement into the portal. Terry says, I messaged your team about getting someone to come over to my home to help me with the funding. And after hearing that changing, should I wait till April? Absolutely not. Because between now and April, you never know what might happen, and you could have very different priorities afterwards. I would encourage you to get somebody to visit you as soon as possible, because individualized funding is there to be utilized, and if you're not making the most of it because you're not quite sure how to make the most of it, then you're only disadvantaging yourself. So Terry, I would encourage you just to keep pushing forward with trying to get that visit sorted, and because we don't actually know what that support for you after 1 April will look like. There might be a completely different process to help you with managing your funding after the 1st of April. So yeah, I wouldn't wait, is my suggestion. Karen says, in terms of the portal, if something has already been approved, is it okay to skip the purchase approval form? Yeah, absolutely. Like if it's not the first time you're claiming for something, or you've already sought pre-approval on the phone or email, do not complete the purchase support form if you don't want to. I mean, it's a good way to at least have that justification captured somewhere in the portal for now. But if you've emailed or phoned and somebody said, yep, go ahead, you can purchase that, you do not need to use the purchase support form. All you need to do is make sure that the description on the expense is enough information for us to know what that expense is, and that there is a receipt or invoice or quote attached. And like we've said, after the 1st of April, there will be no need for the purchase support form as it is currently, because it's around those guidelines. I imagine we may, because purchases will still need to be justified that it helps you address a disability related barrier in your life. I think we'll probably use that form, reword it so that we get you to provide that information if it's not abundantly clear how it would relate to that in the purchase itself, if that makes sense. Like a pair of noise cancelling headphones, we probably don't need much of a justification around how it addresses a disability related barrier in your life, because all of us are very understanding and aware that noise cancelling headphones are related to sensory regulation. Comment from Diane. Have you seen what Kai Karanga are sending out now as notification of service coordination? Now 5 pages, pretty much says don't overspend. Received the rollover this week. I'm sure you've probably seen it by now. I actually haven't. I'm sure probably someone in my team who works with the needs assessors on a more daily basis may have seen something. I can ask the team around. Or Diane, if you feel comfortable, to forward it on to our CEC team for us to have a look at. If it's not got anything personal in there that you don't want us to see. But yeah, the thing is, there's been a really big focus on individualized funding being tied to the allocation period and that only. Previously, there's been a lifelong approach that somebody is going to need funding for a very long time, and if they dip into their next year's allocation, then the understanding that they're going to have an allocation after that and an allocation after that, that it wasn't going to be such a big deal over a very long time scale. But because individualized funding as a whole over the whole country is becoming a larger proportion of a government budget. They're needing to have better controls over it, and to enable the government to do better budgeting and forecasting, they need to know what the true cost is for a certain period of time. And if people are dipping into a future allocation for that period of time, it skews that budgeting. So basically, what they want is for people to make sure that if they get funding for 12 months, they use their funding for 12 months and they make it last, and that's it. So yeah, you'll see that we're going to have a very similar approach to those NASCs and make it very clear to you if you are trending in the wrong direction. If you may have already got emails from us already, but if we see that your funding is being spent at a faster rate than it can sustain over the full period, we will get in touch and let you know that you need to be careful, and that if it continues, we're going to then start asking questions around, is this planned? Do you have a plan to reduce the spending so that the funding lasts, or do you have a plan in place to manage without funded supports? Because what we don't want to happen anymore is for people to get close to the end of their funding period, run out of funding, and then be in a situation where they're without any support for a few weeks until their allocation renews. So while I wait for more questions, I'm just going to have a quick look to see if there's any other information on the DSS website I missed. Now, so it looks like it's all the same information that I've communicated, except for that change to the wording around expensive purchases. I guess one thing to remind you all is that because you already have an allocation, regardless of your next renewal date, you won't get a reassessment until your next renewal date after October next year. That is because they need the space and resource at the NASCs to get through all of the brand new assessments that people need to have, because there is a bit of a wait list at some NASCs for people to receive funded services. Unless there is exceptional circumstances, so if there's a large change to your support needs, you can go to your NASC and they will reassess you if you meet that criteria. But just I would manage your expectations now and say, you know, there's got to be a really significant change to the way your life is for them to reassess you earlier than your next rollover date after October next year. Hopefully that makes sense. Elizabeth says, I have had a number of experiences where I've had long-standing approval for a claim, but someone in payroll randomly decides to query it, often based on incorrect or missing information on their part, adds unnecessary stress since it's up to me to sort it out. Yeah, look, I'll apologize on behalf of the team for that scenario, and some insight into potentially why it's happening. It's because the way in which we record information that relates to prior approvals is not designed to be used for such a long length of time, if that makes sense. So anything that was approved a long time ago, it's very difficult for that information to be surfaced to someone in payroll at the time that they're looking at that expense. And so they could potentially miss that information where it says that thing has been pre-approved and the reason why you're purchasing it. And so, yeah, wrongfully, they're going to go to you and query it. But that's just because, yeah, the way that we've set up the process of managing those pre-approvals and the notes we put down to record that, it is a bit clunky and it wasn't designed to be used in the way it is for so long. So we're looking at improving that so that long term it won't be such an issue. But yeah, I will mention that, Elizabeth, to the payments team, just as a bit of a reminder that there is plenty of history on some of our IF users' accounts, and that they should look through before seeking more information from the customer, from you. Anita says, hi Simon, if one's rollover is August, what happens between end of funding to October? So in your scenario, on the 1st of April next year, your current funding allocation is going to be adjusted, and then that funding allocation will last you through till August. And then August, you'll just get that same funding amount for the next 12 months. And then unfortunately, you're probably going to be one of the last ones to go through the new assessment process with your needs assessor. And then you'll go through that new process August 2027, if that makes sense. Unless during that period, your funding situation, your life circumstances change. Karen, I've just noticed the time. We've gone over, so I'll just wrap things up. Sorry. Karen says the bit around expensive purchases and overseas travel was in there from the beginning. It's not new. Yeah, Karen, what I was specifically saying is that the language they used was sensitive purchases or expensive, but what they actually changed is the wording to say items over a set value amount. So the bit about one-off purchases above a set value limit, they had just used the word expensive when I first saw that information announced. So yeah. Paul says, when you said adjusted, what do you mean? The DSS have decided on a process of reviewing a person's spending data of their funding from June 2023 to June 2025 and adjust your allocation based on that information. What we don't know is if you don't have spending data from that period, what they're going to do with you. But that's the information we know at this stage. They're going to recalculate everybody's existing funding based on that information. Karen says, so in terms of the history, do you have a suggestion as to how it could be handled by the IF user? Could you say this item was approved back in whenever? Yeah, that could help. I mean, it's however much responsibility you want to take for it, or just wait and see if we do challenge it. But yes, you could say originally approved, and then some idea of the date so that the team can go back. So like if it was approved a couple of years ago, you could say August 2023 was approved. And that way we can look through the chronological notes on your file and just verify, okay, yes, this was approved ongoing back then. And they can see the original justification. But it's on a case-by-case basis. If you're currently claiming for things consistently and they're not asking for clarification, then just continue on. And then if somebody does seek clarification, then you could just remind the team that it's already been approved, and then give them the date at that moment. Elizabeth says, I have one claim where I've put in the description, see note on file, and that's worked. Yeah, that absolutely can work. I need to apologize because I have gone over time. This has been a wonderful live stream. So many awesome questions. If anybody puts anything in the comments after I go, I will respond to them in a comment form. But thank you all massively to those who commented and engaged. This was a fabulous live stream, and I will do it all again for you next week. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I will see you next Tuesday. Ka kite. And we're clear. I'm so sorry.